Joining us now to discuss, dare I call them, the depressing details, highly respected author, publisher, professional investor, and chairman of Casey Research, Doug Casey. Doug, it's our honor to have you here today on America's Forum.
And it's my pleasure, JD. Thank you.
Now, Doug, for some time now, you've been warning about the Greater Depression. Can you give us the details of the economic disruption you have labeled the Greater Depression?
Well, we ought to define the word depression to start with. And I think the best broad general definition of a depression, a word which is bandied around but not well defined, is it's a period of time during which most people's standard of living drops significantly. Now, if we use that definition, the standard of living of the average American has been dropping since the early 1970s. But in 2007, 2008, something special happened. And what we did then is enter a gigantic financial hurricane. And right now, we're just in the eye of that storm. It's my opinion that perhaps by the end of the year, certainly by the middle of next year, we're going to be going into the trailing edge of the hurricane. It's going to last much longer, be much more serious, and be quite different from the unpleasantness that we all remember from 2008 and 2009.
It's interesting you use this hurricane analogy, saying we are in the eye of the storm now where things are relatively calm, and as you say, with the disruption picking back up perhaps by the end of this year, it prompts the question, how bad can it get if things really take a chaotic turn? What could we expect?
Well, we have a lot of problems. Let me count the ways, as it were. The U.S. government has about $17 trillion of acknowledged financial debt. This is already enough that it can't be repaid. And at this point, with interest rates artificially suppressed to essentially all-time lows, if they were to rise to realistic levels, we couldn't even pay the interest bill. So at this point, the U.S. has to borrow up to $1 trillion per year. And the nice Chinese and Japanese have been doing that so far. They're no longer doing that. So they're selling the debt to the Federal Reserve. They buy U.S. government bonds, and the U.S. government's accounts in commercial banks are credited with currency units issued by the Federal Reserve. So this is going to result in catastrophic levels of inflation in the years to come. So that's one thing that's going to happen. Another thing that's happened is that all these new currency units that are being created, and it's about, even at this moment, $55 billion a month, have created a new bubble in the stock market. It's creating a new bubble in the real estate market. And of course, we're in the middle of a super bubble in the bond market, which is the biggest market of all. So we've got very severe problems there. We've got severe economic problems that are coming up, severe military problems, sociological problems. I think we actually are at the edge of the precipice, even though the sun is shining outside and business is going on as normal at this particular moment.
I forget who said it, and this is maybe a very poor paraphrase, but the thought is along this line. Things are okay until suddenly they aren't. And so we are confronting this situation, which prompts yet another logical question. What do everyday Americans do to try and protect themselves with all these external factors, these powerful forces at work, and these national policies that have been so wrong-headed and so fraught with economic consequence? I mean, do we go into a survivalist mode? Do we have a small garden? Do we go to gold? What should we be doing?
Well, it's a serious problem, and the answer to it depends very much on who you are. Because as you're well aware, about half of the citizenry of this country are net recipients of benefits from the government. and don't pay income tax. Now, I don't think anybody should pay income tax. I don't believe it's necessary or moral. But that said, half of the people in this country are living off of the other half of the people in this country. So, and another interesting statistic that came out recently was that something like 40% of the people in this country would be on a breadline if they lost just one paycheck. They've got zero savings. So what do you do? I mean, if you have a lot of money or good savings, you should internationalize your assets, because your biggest risk today, the financial risks and other risks are huge, but your political risks are gigantic. So what you've got to do is diversify politically and internationally and get assets outside of the U.S., which is harder and harder to do, incidentally. But for most people that don't have assets, what they have to do is cut their standard of living now while it's still under their control, and try to save. Take 2 jobs. And what you mentioned about putting a garden in the backyard, actually an excellent idea.
A sobering thought as I was listening to the litany of what may befall us. I used to think about the line, the full faith and credit of the United States government, and sadly, there's no more credit, there's no more fiscal sanity in Washington, and internationally we have these problems. Doug Casey, we appreciate your candor in setting up what is a tough subject to talk about, but one that people need to know about nonetheless. And again, we appreciate your time here today on America's Forum. So there's Doug Casey with his take. What's your take? Do you think we are headed for a greater depression? And will it mean inevitably for the producers, for the workers in this country, taking on another job, sacrificing our standard of living? Or can things still be changed? We'd love for you to tweet us your comments at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum. There's also email. Our address, connect@newsmaxtv.com. And let's not forget Facebook, y'all. Facebook.com/NewsmaxTV. America's Forum rolls on following this timeout. Stay with us.